Fishing Intelligence, a fishing improvement podcast for the modern angler. Welcome back to the second episode of Fishing Intelligence. I'm your host, Jacob Jasonic, and on this week's episode, we are talking with Cody Prather of Yak For It. He's an avid kayak fisherman, kayak filmer, and we actually fished with him on the Angler Tour on Sam Rayburn. Cody, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm a little intimidated because you threw that intelligence word in there, and I don't know that I'm really going to fit into that profile. So we'll give it a go.
Well, we're trying to make the intelligent aspect of it pretty broad. You know, we got to tie in a lot of different levels of fishermen here with this podcast. But after fishing with you, I know that you definitely know your stuff. So how's the fishing been recently?
Well, the fish have been really intelligent, and I have not. So it's been an uphill battle. Some days have been feast, and most of the days have been famine. But honestly, I'm just feeling pretty blessed because I've been able to get out on the water and spend a lot of time and hit a bunch of different places and see some new places and things like that. It's been pretty awesome, really and truly.
And I actually saw on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, that you almost broke that 10-pound mark. And was that a topwater fish?
Oh, yeah. Pretty much, well, I wouldn't say all my big fish come on topwater, but a good portion of them do. I just have to have a lot of confidence in it. Even in summertime, the topwater bite in Texas just really seems to be solid. It's not always a way that you're going to catch a lot of fish, but I found with the right topwater baits, you have a chance to catch a lot of, really good quality fish. And I was a little heartbroken. It didn't break double digits, but I got close enough to put a smile on my face and have a little bit of bragging rights, and haven't had that in a while. So it's always good when you have a little something to brag about, I guess.
Yeah, and that fish just about doubles my best largemouth, so definitely a brag-worthy fish. Lay the story down for that fish. Like, were you fishing a grass line, early morning, evening? What was the setting?
No, fishing a rocky lake. I mean, big boulders in this lake, and I went to an area that I've actually never fished. Totally new place, and I fished this lake a lot. It's kind of my little secret hole because it doesn't get a lot of pressure. Went and put in at a new place, fishing with a buddy, and did not like looking back in the creek. Didn't like anything about it. And but it was early. It's like, well, let's just go throw some topwater around some brush. And we went to the shallow stuff. Probably 7 or 8 casts into the morning. Hooked up on a 2-pounder, and it's like, okay, well, maybe there's some fish in here. 2 casts later, all of a sudden, the bottom just dropped out of the lake. I mean, it's like the whole lake just dropped about 2 inches, all of a sudden, and this big old head comes out of the water. And yeah, it was one of those things where the whole world just stands still. And I've had some big fish blow up on topwater, but I don't know that I've had a fish this big come out of the water on topwater.
And your heart stopped?
No, my heart did not stop. You would think that it would stop, but it started beating so fast I thought it was about to come out of my chest. My whole body was shaking. I don't know how I kept a hold of that rod. And we're in the middle of a bunch of stick-ups. There's brush all over the place, and this fish just starts peeling drag and trying to go into the brush, and got into some of it. And I got 30-pound vicious braid tied on, and haven't retied this braid in I don't know how long. It's been on there for many months. It could have been on there for 6 months or even a year, because I don't change it. I just got that much confidence in it. And 30-pound braid with a 9.5-pound fish, and it's wrapped around brush. I'm in a kayak. It's not like I can just troll over there to get it, but I start trying to chase it, and it's just a rodeo. It comes out of the brush, jumps 2 feet in the air. That's when your heart stops.
Yeah.
And stayed hooked up.
That is too cool.
Somehow managed to get it to the boat, and got it in the net. Didn't want to fit in the net. I got too small of a net, but got the head in, got it in the boat, and that's when everything just went. It got crazy. Like all the shaking started coming in, and it was hard to get the hooks out of its mouth, and grabbed the boga grips and got a weight on it, and it was just short of 10 pounds, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's still a heck of a fish. Great story and awesome feeling.
Oh yeah, I mean, catching it in a kayak, you don't have that control of having that trolling motor in a big boat, and that stability. I mean, a big fish like that, I mean, it's a sleigh ride. They will pull you wherever they want to pull you. And just being able to kick I'm in a Hobie, PA 14, so I'm in a 14-footer that doesn't always want to turn on a dime, but will go over and run over most of that brush and give you a lot more stability to be able to fight a fish like that. And if I didn't have reverse, if I couldn't kick that thing in reverse, I guarantee I would have lost that fish. Yeah. But just having that ability to put it in reverse and back out and around some of these brush piles, stick ups and everything that I was in, just really, really made it happen. 2 years ago, before I had reverse on a kayak on my Hobie, there's no way I would have landed that fish. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and the pedal drive is just so incredibly nice. That was one of the things from our day of fishing on Sam Rayburn, where it was just every time I made a cast, I had to get my paddle out, catch back up with where I'm supposed to be drifting, put the paddle down, pick the rod up, make the cast. That's got to be just an ease to have a pedal.
You can catch big fish out of a paddle kayak for sure.
Yeah.
But it all depends on where you're fishing and how you're fishing. There's you have to approach things completely different in a paddle kayak versus a pedal kayak versus a boat. It changes the way that you fish. You have to get used to your equipment. You got to get used to what you're fishing out of and how you can get into it. I wouldn't have taken a paddle kayak in where I was fishing with my pedal drive. I mean, I still would have been able to access that water. I just would have had to have fished it from a different presentation, and it would have been more difficult. But fighting a big fish in the brush, you can't do that with a paddle. I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah. Put the rod down and grab your paddle so you can turn?
I've tried the one-handed paddle, one-handed rod technique before, and I've lost a couple fish that way. It's not easy.
Oh yeah, me too. You're not the only one. I mean, I've done it and it's worked, and I've done it and it's not worked.
Yep.
But I mean, when you got a giant fish on and it's pulling you every which way you want to, you just you want your hands on your rod the whole time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And seriously, I'm pretty excited about the braid, how it held up. I was wondering how it was gonna do and with that big of a fish and all the brush, and I had to horse that fish in. It wasn't one of those things where I got to play it out. I got big old trebles stuck in that thing's face, and I don't know how well I've got it hooked, but I know I gotta bear down on it.
Yeah. And so, are you always been a vicious line user? Is that your go-to braid?
Yeah, vicious has been what I've had on for quite a while, last 3 years, I guess. And from a kayaking standpoint, I've been really excited about it. I've been very happy with how it performs, and also their fluorocarbon. I use a lot of their fluorocarbon. Mainly because with some of the brands, there's so many different fluorocarbons to choose from that I'm not a gear junkie. I'm not the guy that has to have this specific fluorocarbon for this application. And honestly, I just don't have that many rods and reels to be, be too choosy on stuff. I want one good fluorocarbon and one good braid that I can use for as many applications as you can think of. Because one minute I might have a topwater tied on, the next I might need that rod to throw a spinner bait or,
Yeah.
or something else. Because I'm not going to have 30 rods
Yeah,
in
that's
my
just how
kayak.
kayak fishing is. You got to make a choice of 4 to 6 rods the day before you go out, and got to rig up so
Mm-hmm.
that you can be changing up what you're throwing, but still be using the same rod. So it's like you got to really get a core set of rods that are able to do multiple different things.
Yeah, so I'll run 30-pound braid most of the time on all my rods, and I'll tie a fluorocarbon leader on there if I need to, and I'll vary that leader. Um, sometimes I'm going to want a 30-foot leader. Sometimes I'm going to want a 2-foot leader, but I tend to run a lot of leaders on that. And then if I need to go straight braid, I just cut that leader off, and you're out 30 yards of line instead of 80 or 100.
Yeah.
And I like not having to go through. I like a kind of a middle of the road fluorocarbon that can, I can flip with it. I can throw a jig with it, or I can throw a spinner bait or something lighter. You can throw moving baits with it, and it's not going to be the softest stuff in the world, but it's not going to be the most brittle. I want something, not too stiff, not too soft, right there in the middle, so it can vary between all the different applications. And so that's where I really feel like Vicious shines for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that for me, for the most part, I'm either using 20-pound braid for my bait casting setups, or I'll use 10
Hmm.
pound on my spinning setups, and then I'll pretty much for all applications except top water, I'm tying on some sort of leader, whether it be 12-pound or 8-pound. But that's up here, up north. Obviously, you guys have a
Hmm.
little bit more to worry about down south in fish size and viciousness.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a different deal when you can be picking up some 10 pound double digit largies. You want to prepare for the biggest stuff, and fishing lakes like Rayburn, Toledo Bend. There can be giants. So I know if I fished up north, I would probably go with a lot lighter line. But here, it's like for me, 30-pound braid is kind of the low end of what I'm going to use. I do like 10-pound braid for like drop shot rigs and for my spinning reels, anywhere that 10 to 15 pound. But yeah, 30-pound just really seems to be the diameter is so small. The strength is there. When you catch a big fish and it wraps you around trees and stuff. I mean, it's funny because right after that 9.5 pounder, about 5 casts later, I hooked a 6 pounder
Wow.
in probably less than a foot of water. Couldn't get a boat back there. I tried the next day, but I could get back there with my kayak, and that thing took off the wrong direction and wrapped me completely around a big tree, and I had to kick the kayak in reverse again, and I'm basically fighting this fish going backwards the whole way,
Wow.
and landed it. But I was pretty excited because I had like 15 pounds of fish and in 2 casts.
Yeah, that's a heck of a day. Here in
Yeah, I wish
Ohio, that's a full bag.
shoot, here in Texas on a lot of these lakes, that's a full bag.
Yeah.
That's of course it happens when I'm not in a tournament, but
Well, yeah,
hopefully,
that's just how it goes. You can't expect to catch the 9.5 pounder during a tournament unless, of course, it was the day before our trip to Sam Rayburn when they all weighed in an average of, what was it, 8 pound average or something like that was the 5 bag.
yeah, they weighed in like a 40-pound bag, 38-pound bag.
Unreal.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome to Texas. I mean, when it's right, it's right.
Yeah.
When you hit things right, you can be the biggest hero in the world, but you got to fight through a lot of days of being the zero.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I remember talking when we were on Sam Rayburn. We were doing a little interview with you afterwards, and we were just talking about how different the approach was for kayak fishing versus a boat. Because with kayak fishing, obviously, you put in somewhere, you only have a limit of maybe 5 miles with if you have the pedal drive, probably
Hmm.
less with the paddles. So, what's your technique for approaching water with a kayak as opposed to a boat?
Wow, big question that's going to require um, I could talk on this for quite a while.
Let's
Um,
get the summary. Give me like the key
the
points
summer,
for the
the
listeners.
summary is I'm looking for a place that is going to give me options to fish all day long, and is going to be close to the ramp. I don't mind exploring, but if I'm just out fun fishing, I want to be able to fish to my, if there's a certain spot that I'm looking at, and it's going to have to be 2 miles or less away, and I'm going to want to fish my way to it. If I have a spot that is, you know, 2 miles away, that's a good starting place. That's about as far as I want to go for a starting point.
Hmm.
And I mean, you can go 5 miles, you can go more than that if you really want to, but at some point you got to make a decision on, are you going to be spending all your time pedaling, or are you going to be spending your time fishing, and which is more important? So um, but I want options. I want a place where I can start out throwing top water, and then I want something that's going to keep me occupied all day. I don't want to go just to one spot that um, I may or may not catch a fish, and then if the fish aren't biting there, then I got to go 2 miles somewhere else.
Hmm.
That's just not economical in a kayak. So when you're really breaking it down, you're looking for something to fish close, and a way to expand on that, and set yourself limits on how far you want to go. Always play the wind. Biggest thing I can tell people is, if it's going to be a windy day, then start out going into the wind and make sure you're coming back with the wind.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you're tired and you've been working your butt off to catch fish, last thing you want to do is have to fight going into the wind.
Could not
So,
agree
and
more.
one big thing that I've learned is, a lot of times when you're forced to stay in one small area, um, you don't have the ability to pick up and run, 5 miles down the lake, or 10 miles across the lake to go check out another spot. So you're forced to sit down in one area and really pick it apart and learn how to catch those fish. And I think there's an advantage to that. And I think I learned a lesson on that this weekend, because I went fishing on Saturday in my kayak, and I caught that 9.5, caught that 5.5 to 6 pounder, and found several other fish in different areas doing different things, and just kind of ground out a really fantastic day of fishing. And then I went back there the next day on Sunday, and just blew through it real fast, and the fish weren't doing what they were doing on Saturday. So I picked up and left.
Yep.
You can do that in a boat. And at the end of the day, things didn't get any better. And all I could think about was, if we'd stayed in that area and kept fishing, we probably would have caught those fish. There was
Yeah.
probably a time that they would have turned on. There's probably a time that it would have gotten good, but I didn't hang around long enough to find it.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things about being in the kayak is it really forces you to try a whole bunch of different things because you are confined to such a small area compared to being in a boat. You got to really know how to break down the water, and I think that's
Hmm.
one of the best things is somebody who's new into kayak fishing, they're going to become an exponentially better fisherman through kayak fishing just because you don't have the options that you have with a boat. You don't have all the rods, you don't have all the tackle. Storage is
Hmm.
limited and you can't travel as far. So it's all about just learning different areas of water and figuring out how to approach them with different techniques.
Yeah, well, different techniques, and just being patient.
Yeah.
People don't realize that you don't think about how those fish are turning on at different times during the day. And, as you're just covering water and randomly fishing in a small area, you think, oh, I caught a fish here at, 8 o'clock in the morning. Then I caught another one here at 9, and, another one at 9:15, another one at 9:30. This area is hot. Well, it might not be that particular area. It may be a timing thing, around there. Um, it's just so many little nuances that you can learn in a kayak that I feel like people miss in a boat just because you have that ability to run all over the place. And tell you what, you get in a boat, anytime I get in a boat, it's really hard for me to just buckle down and stay in one area all day, because when you hit that lull, dang it, you want to run.
Yeah. We were feeling that on Sam Rayburn. We were just catching small fish and thinking about, man, if we should we change spots? Should we pick up the kayaks, go dump them somewhere else? And then just decided in the end that there wasn't enough time. But that's one of the main things about kayak fishing is you gotta just
Yeah,
fish where
then
you
then
are.
there are definitely those kind of days. Yeah, and
Those
and
can get
those are the days
frustrating.
that you're filming or you're in a tournament. It seems to be when that happens. That was kind of funny. So, um, yeah, it just baffles me sometimes how, one day the fish are there, you go back and you really try to pick it apart the next day, and it's just like poof, gone.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
happens to all of us. But um, yeah, that was an interesting day on Rayburn. I
yeah.
did I did enjoy it though.
Oh, it was absolutely a fun time. Anytime you can get on the water's a win in my book. So, you get out there, catch a few Texas bass, and enjoy the day in the kayaks, getting a little sunburn, a little windburn, a little bit of everything.
Hmm.
A few fish too.
But I talked about this a little bit on the in the video. But the biggest thing to take away from a trip like that, when you do get out there and it's tough, a lot of times when you're using the angler, you don't keep those trips on some of those bad days. And I'm a big proponent of keep the trips, even if they're bad days. I mean, label it in there, Sam Rayburn horrible day. Whatever you need to do, because you want to go back. You want to know the conditions when the fish are really turning on, and you want to know the conditions when the fish are really turned off, because it may not be. You may find those same conditions later on in different areas, and the fish are biting out deep, or they're biting in a different location. But you need to keep that reference point of the good, the bad, and the ugly trips, just so you've got that reference to go back to. Um, and I think it teaches you, it allows you to learn a lot more about an area than just, oh, hey, I caught big fish this day in these conditions in these locations.
Yeah, if you really want to break down the water, you're gonna have bad days, and that's just part of fishing. The classic
Uh,
saying, that's why they call it fishing, not catching. So you got to take the
yeah, I mean,
bad and learn from it.
especially in a kayak, because if you make a wrong decision on an area in a kayak, then you're kind of stuck with it.
Hmm. So it's yeah, there's not going to be too many options for movement. So it's just take what you get from the day, learn from it, come back better the next day. Different
Yeah,
conditions, see how the fish react differently to those.
absolutely. And I hope people listening to this will look into the kayak world a little bit more, and some of the benefits on it. I know up there, especially in the north, man, there's so many lakes that and community ponds and stuff like that you can just take a kayak to and drop it in the water and be fishing. And what I say about kayaking is it gets you off the bank. The bank fishermen sit there and look across the river or the pond like, man, I wish I could go and fish that other side. Or you see that bush that's just out of casting range that you really wish you could get to. And it doesn't take much. It takes you know a couple $100 investment, and you can be out on the water hitting some of those new places. And then as the addiction grows, so can the cost of your kayak, because they go from a couple $100 to several $1,000s.
And it's on such a up and up right now. Kayak fishing is just blowing up everywhere. You have the Tournament of Champions coming up. You want to talk a little bit to the listeners about what that is?
Yeah, Tournament of Champions. Yak Fort Tournament of Champions is a national championship style tournament. One of the hardest tournament, well, probably the hardest tournament in the country to get into, just because the qualifications are so high. You really have to earn an invitation through your local club and through major events, and most clubs and trails and organizations will get 5 invitations to give out. So that's not a whole lot of people that can come from each region to get there. And it'll be a $200 entry fee tournament. There'll be some pretty big payouts, and it's just a good time. It's one of the few tournaments a year where we get people from all over the country. I mean, we've got a group from Maine wanting to come to Texas to come fish this.
Wow.
It'll be on Lake Fork first weekend in November. And if people don't earn an invitation through their organizations, then there will be an open event on Friday prior to the main event, which is a 2-day tournament on Saturday and Sunday. The open event is a 1-day event on Friday that will allow anglers the last chance to earn an invitation.
Very cool. And I've fished a couple of the, not that tournament, but I've fished a couple of the kayak tournament series, and it's such a unique tournament. Just a bunch of guys getting in their kayaks, paddling out. It's just good, fun competitiveness, and everybody's just battling. The kayaks really, I feel like they can even the playing field a lot, which is
yeah, the competition's pretty stiff. I mean,
yeah.
guys are getting good. Competition's getting stronger every year, as it should, with a growing sport. But the main thing that you find is exactly what you said. The camaraderie amongst kayak anglers is second to none. Just camping out the night before and hanging out, everybody grilling out, having a good time, and guys will even share a lot of knowledge and information with you on the water. I mean, it's still a competitive event, but there's not, and I don't know. I find kayak anglers to be pretty open with each other on introducing somebody to the sport.
Yeah, because in the end, it's just everybody's just trying to get people fishing, and the kayak industry's so open to growth and to new people coming in and learning the sport. So it's really cool to see that in the tournament setting. So I'm gonna hit you with one more question before we wrap this up. For all the Texas anglers, give us 3 lures right now that are hitting well for you.
Wow. 3 of them, huh?
Or 1. If you're not comfortable giving up 3, then just give us 1. But I was thinking you could get a different water levels.
No, I mean in Texas there are 3 things that I'm always going to have tied on, no matter the time of year or the lake that I'm going to be on. The first one's going to be a Rapala skitter walk, so a topwater walking bait, and I love the rattle in that bait. The second thing that I'm going to have tied on is a jig. I'm either going to have depending on the situation, it's going to be a Strike King football head jig, or a Dirty Jigs casting jig, and anything in between. But I will have a jig tied on. And last but not least, and I hate to say it's kind of embarrassing coming from a Texan saying this,
Uh-oh.
I'm going to have a drop shot.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm going to have the fairy wand. I'm sorry, the fairy wand will come out.
It catches fish.
And it catches big fish. I mean, come on. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could drop shot a 12-inch worm.
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're keeping it off the bottom. If you want to drop shot a 12-inch worm, put it on a bait caster, and then if it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself. But I love, you know, I'm not going to put it on 6 pound test. I'm going to put it on 10. And if the water's got enough color, I'm going to put it on 12 pound test. But I'll put a full size trick worm on there and catch 5 pounders. Not unheard of.
I can't blame you one bit. Coming from the northerner who loves drop shotting, that's probably my favorite technique. So as much as it pains you to say it, it's my heart's warm right now.
Well, I put up with a lot of grief every time I get in the boat with some of my friends, because I don't own a boat. I've got a kayak, but I got friends that have boats and they want to go fishing, and I usually bring 4 rods with me. I bring 2 top waters, a jig, and a drop shot. And when I put that fairy wand in there, I get a lot of grief until I go to catching fish.
And then everybody shuts up.
Yep, absolutely.
Alrighty, well, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for hopping on, Cody. We really appreciate all the intelligence that you dropped on us.
I don't know about that. I feel like I just kind of baffled you with BS, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And I enjoy talking with you, Jacob, and it's just great to talk fishing.
Thank you guys again so much for listening. Be sure to be on the lookout for next week's episode. We'll see you next week. Fishing Intelligence, a fishing improvement podcast for the modern angler.